Tom, we've reinstated you here on the show after missing your hit yesterday. That's fine. There's a small fine to pay, but don't worry about that.
Okay, great, guys. Thank you.
Bottle of wine. So, Tom, let's start with evolving, if I can call it that, David Johnston news. We thought we were done with this, and all of a sudden, David Johnston publishes an op-ed in today's Globe and Mail. And I want to pick this one particular part, which is toward the end of his op-ed. He says this: the work, meaning his work, the work is not done, and I will not be dissuaded from completing it. What do you take that to mean?
Well, that sort of pops off the page, doesn't it? I mean, it's feisty, and he was that way, throughout his piece, saying, I'm going to take this on, and using, rather strong language. But that particular bit got me scratching my head. I'm sort of going, okay, most of this op-ed piece is a rehashing of what he said earlier in the week, but he's been roundly beaten up in the media across Canada. I mean, I've never seen anything go over so badly. That was supposed to have been planned. Trudeau was thrilled because he got what he wanted, no commission of inquiry, but at the same time, David Johnston's been paying a terribly heavy price. So I went to something called the order paper and the notice paper. This is a public document of the House of Commons where they show what's coming up. And one of the things that opposition parties get to do is what's called an opposition day motion. So what's that? Well, you get to present a motion in the House of Commons and debate it, and then it'll be voted on. So this one, it's actually two versions of the same one that the NDP put out last night for discussion on Monday and a vote on Tuesday, goes something like this. It's got two parts. And the first part is there's no excuse not to have a commission of inquiry. Second part is David Johnston has to step back. He just cannot. If ever we do this other part that we're talking about, it certainly can't be David Johnston. So this is a really strong stance by the NDP. They're really digging in their heels. And, a lot of people have been saying, they've been a tag team with the Liberals and so forth. But here, Jagmeet Singh and their team are saying, no, watch us go. Now, the really interesting part, Aaron and Natasha, will be the following. If ever, I do know Trudeau quite well, and he has a very strong tendency to double down, just go all in. And he could easily decide, you want to play that game? Okay. If you vote in favor of this, I am declaring this what we call a confidence motion. So all of a sudden, they would be if everybody votes, because I'm convinced that the Bloc will vote with the NDP on this. I'm absolutely convinced that the Conservatives are going to vote with them on this. So it almost goes straight back to the NDP because they're going to be calling their bluff. If the NDP presents this, they obviously have to vote for it. But if Trudeau says that it's a confidence motion, guess what happens? We've got a federal election coming up.
All over David Johnston. All because of, if you will, David Johnston.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's well said, because, that's exactly where we are right now. When you read this, okay, he says, no holds barred, and I'm going to go after this, and blah, 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 blah. But he's basically trying to rehash what he said. The basic flaw in everything that he did, people have looked at everything from the legal counsel that he had with him to what he said and didn't say. But the major flaw in everything that he put forward is that he's trying to convince people that he's seen everything and there's no way to prove that.
Right. And if we had seen what he had seen, we would agree with him.
Exactly. That was the quote we parsed from Trudeau the other day. Trudeau saying, I don't understand what's going on here. I'm offering the party leaders to see all of the documents we gave to David Johnston. But was any of this given under oath? Did anybody swear that this is all the information that exists? I read one reference in an article in the Toronto Star, because the Toronto Star is slavishly pro-Liberal. They said, well, they got a certificate from the Privy Council office saying this is what we have. You know what the Privy Council office is? That's Justin Trudeau's own ministry. Now, the key thing that Johnston said in his report was, look, none of the ministers, and certainly not the Prime Minister, ever failed to act on any information. But none of them have given evidence under oath. None of them have been cross-examined. This is completely 100% self-serving stuff from Trudeau and the people around him. And for whatever reason, because I really do think he's had a sterling career, David Johnston has swallowed this hook, line, and sinker. And I think it's a sad way to be ending a career.
I agree.
When he put out that op-ed, as you correctly said, that op-ed was only put out this afternoon and went online around 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Well, for him to have said that line in there, okay, like, I won't be dissuaded, he's basically throwing down the gauntlet saying, I don't care if the House of Commons says I can't do this, I'm going to do this. Well, guess what? he doesn't have any independent existence in this. He's no longer the Governor General. He doesn't have a term of office. This is just something that Trudeau asked him to do, and he's decided that he's going to name himself to do the public hearing part. Not that there won't be a public inquiry. But if the House of Commons unanimously, except for the Liberals, of course, but every other MP in the House of Commons says this guy should step back and he refuses to, then we're heading into a gong show. I mean, it's not even going to be funny.
But where are we heading if that was to happen? I mean, could Trudeau save some face by simply saying, okay, you know what, I get it. The opposition is all against this. The NDP, who are, with the Liberals, are against this. Just go ahead and name somebody else. Is that not a way to save some face here?
Yes, and that's what I suggested. If we're going to have to go ahead with some parts of this, in my article in the Gazette on Wednesday, I said, look, if this is what we've got to do one thing just to make this decent. Come up with a name of somebody that will be approved by the House of Commons. And by the way, that's also in the NDP motion. They're saying, look, any name that you come up with to replace him once he stepped back has to receive the unanimous approval. Let's say all-party approval of the House of Commons. And if you get that, maybe the person will be able to proceed and do something semi-credible short of a full commission of inquiry. But for now, the guy who's already decided in advance that he knows the answer is he says, well, I have to look at the flaws in how information is communicated. Mr. Johnston, that's not what people want to know. They want to know, did the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government contrive to defeat mostly conservative candidates in the 2019-2021 campaigns, and you're not giving us any serious answers on that. You're part of the stonewalling effort. You're part of the cover-up. Sorry about that.
I'm thoroughly confused, honestly. I don't understand what the possible motive. People react badly to your decision, and then you double down and say, "No, I'm not going anywhere." I'm completely flummoxed by this. But let's move on to West Island MP Francis Scarpaleggia, who also had an op-ed in the Gazette today, basically also kind of doubling down and saying, my constituents have got it wrong, and I voted for what I believe is right.
So, Tom, here's a clip from the interview he did this morning with Andrew Carter.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I think many things have become conflated. I mean, I've had people say to me, well, Bill C-13 will erode, English language education rights, but that's completely false because those rights are burned into the Constitution.
That's a bit rich, considering Bill 40 and then another move to try to seize English school boards and put it. I mean, where does he get that from?
He's pulling that out of thin air. He's just not following the file. And I'll preface it as I did when we talked about this with Andrew this morning. I quite like Francis Scarpaleggia. Okay, I mean, he's a smart guy. He's got an outstanding riding office that's always been there to help people. But what he just said there is flies in the face of what you just said. I mean, first of all, he's always talking about the preamble, but as you've had a chance to point out, Aaron, there are a couple of other references to Bill 101 in there. That's the first thing to mention. The second thing is you're absolutely right. Bill 40 was a bold-faced attempt by the CAC government to remove the right of the English-speaking community to control and manage its school boards, and it's anything but settled. And one of the things that Bill C-13, Trudeau's bill, the one that Scarpaleggia likes, one of the things that it does is it essentially asserts that there's only one linguistic minority in Canada. And that, of course, could play havoc with the eventual court interpretation of Section 23 of the Charter. I happen to have been part of one of the people consulted on the drafting of 23. I was in the legal department at the Conseil de la Langue Française. A guy named Gérard Bertrand was visiting me and my colleague Michel Sparer on the drafting of 23. And he had originally in his drafting, they were talking about schools of the linguistic minority. And my friend Sparer prevailed upon him and said, make the wording larger. Les établissements, it's the institutions of the community. So that would include school boards by interpretation. That's why the English in Quebec and the French outside Quebec have often been in lockstep in the big legal cases that went up to the Supreme Court. One of the first ones we got involved in, we hired a professor from the University of Ottawa named Joseph Elliott Magnet. He pleaded the right of the French in Ontario to have control and management of their school boards. That was the ACFO case, and then there was the Maillet case from Western Canada that confirmed a right to control and manage school boards for the linguistic minorities. That's on the table right now. That's in danger right now because Legault's attacking it, and Legault's going at it through the basement window. He's trying to go through the attic. He's, as you correctly say, he's got another bill trying to remove the right to control and manage. And this does not go in the right direction. of affirming the equality of those language rights. It breaks the symmetry, and it breaks the ability of the English-speaking community to plead, as it did right up until the adoption of C-13. So on that, I have no fear whatsoever in saying that Francis is just wrong.